To order. Tonight, Justin and Richard will not be here. I don't think Richard's coming in online. Is he, Mike?
No, he's not.
I think they both will be absent. Okay. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Okay. We have residents. We have one resident to address. That is really loud. The board provides a time of public comment at committee meetings for residents and taxpayers to bring their thoughts on the specific agenda items to the board, but it is not a time for exchange between the board, administration, and speaker. We ask that the speakers refrain from identifying specific students, staff, or community members by name. Each resident is provided up to 3 minutes to speak at the committee meeting on a topic identified on the agenda. Residents and taxpayers who are interested in making these comments must complete the electronic registration form prior to 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Tonight we have one request.
Molly Snavely.
No? All right. Let's move forward then. First on the agenda is second step with Mr. Kramer.
Hi. So Dr. Dandridge asked me to come this evening to just provide you an update with second step implementation. So I have a brief slideshow for you where we surveyed the 6th grade teachers in the district just to get their input on some of the changes that we had made this year. So you'll see just for an agenda, first just an overview of implementation, and then a comparison of 5th and 6th grade. I'll explain that when we get there, our survey results, and then just a summary of our findings. So second step implementation, as you know, last year we started for the first year using digital across all of our classrooms K to 6. Last year, however, we used the 5th grade curriculum. The elementary package that comes from second step only goes up to 5th grade. And because we had not used it before, we were able to use 5th grade in both 5th grade and 6th grade because those students had not had that before. This year, being our second year of implementation, again, we're using it K to 6. But this year, we utilized the 6th grade lessons for our 6th grade students. The 6th grade lessons are part of the middle school package that comes with second step, so that's a 6 through 8. But what we did was we utilized that this year for the first year and then got feedback from the teachers to see how they felt about it. Yes?
Mr. Kramer, I think for me and I suspect for others, could you just do like a 30-second reminder of what second step is?
Of course, sorry. So second step is the social emotional learning curriculum that we're currently using. It was utilized in the district before 2022. We had the hard copies within the district, and in 2022, we utilized the digital so across every setting so that all of our students were able to access it. And actually, in the next slide, I have a breakdown of what the things that they go over. I apologize for the small print. But what you'll see here is a comparison between 5th and 6th grade because this is what the 6th graders had last year versus this year. And you'll notice that in each unit, they each have 4 units. And you'll see that the unit 1 for 5th grade is growth, mindset, and goal setting, where unit 1 in 6th grade is mindsets and goals. And so you'll notice there is a comparison between the two. However, the 6th grade content is a bit more in depth. As you kind of look at I think unit 4 is a good example of that, where in the elementary setting, the unit is on problem solving, where in the middle school setting, it's on managing relationships and social conflict. I've also included there for your review just the CASEL standards that are addressed in each of the units. CASTLE is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. That is where Second Step bases their content off of. And then also you'll see in the 6th grade content under the units, the themes that go along. And you'll see that a lot of those are definitely more middle school focused, but they definitely are appropriate for our 6th grade students. So in the survey, we asked a variety of statements and questions, which we'll go over each one individually, and then we asked for possible answers of strongly disagree down to strongly agree, just to get their feedback on either the question or the content that was asked of them, to find out if there's any changes that we should make. I believe we have 22 6th grade teachers, and I had 19 total responses. So our first question was, the content that is covered in the 6th grade lessons is relevant to my students. On that response, 100% of our responses were either neutral, agree, or strongly agree. So none of our teachers felt like that this, even though it was a middle school focus, that it wasn't relevant for their students. 2 was, my students utilize the content that's being covered in their lessons. On this one, we had, here I have numbers, 84% of our respondents said neutral or above. We did have 3 respondents that responded disagree. But I will say that, you know, witnessing students utilize the content, sometimes you don't get to see that because a lot of it happens during those non-structured times like recess and lunch. I do, however, hear from parents, and actually just the other day again in a meeting in our younger grade levels, we are hearing teachers and parents talk about how the things that they're learning in Second Step definitely apply to some of the issues that they're having at the primary and early intermediate areas. Go 3, yep. So I feel that 6th grade lessons, using it again next year, will benefit my students. 89% of our respondents said neutral or above. We did have 2 respondents that disagreed. I would imagine those probably both correlated with those that felt like their kids are not accessing the lessons that are being taught. However, though, when we asked the question, after using 5th grade and 6th grade lessons in back-to-back years, what do you feel best meets your students' needs? 100% of the respondents said that they feel that the 6th grade lessons definitely meet the needs of the 6th graders better than the 5th grade. We asked a couple open-ended questions just to get some feedback. Any topics that were not covered in Second Step that we thought would be beneficial. Cyberbullying was one that was brought up. Respect and responsibility. They are both, respect and responsibility are topics that are definitely covered early on in the program. At the younger levels, with the concepts being more complex, they don't necessarily address that directly. And I would hope that after students are funneling up through the program that they're seeing more of that as they get to them. And then self-esteem, confidence, time management, habit building, interests, entrepreneur. A lot of that gets covered in other places outside of Second Step. And a lot of the skills, though, do then build to a more robust self-esteem and confidence. And there's a lot of talking about like time management and things like that within the program, but it doesn't necessarily address it directly. And then 6 was just, we asked for any additional thoughts. You'll see there that that they felt like the lessons were applicable and relatable for the teachers and the students. The one response there is that the engagement with the Second Step lessons is very low. And again, this is, you know, 6th grade is a different animal than the primary grades. And then the last one there is about the neuroscience aspect and the why behind the teaching. It really talks about, you know, why their emotions and actions are the way they are, and that they felt like it was more meaningful than the 5th grade program. And they do integrate social media integration within some of the lessons, which I think is really important because we do see a lot of that at the upper elementary levels going into middle school, the social media issues, we see that. So just in summary, overall, I think the overall response was that the teacher found the Second Step lessons beneficial for students. They definitely overwhelmingly support using 6th grade rather than the 5th grade lessons, and that the content definitely was relevant. I know the one thing that Mr. Hoffman and I had heard from teachers is lesson 1 of the program is like, welcome to your new school. because they see middle school as a new place in 6th grade. So that's a change that we'll definitely make, as we can probably skip over 1 and go to 2 and making changes. But I think overall the lessons were very relevant and beneficial. And I think as we see kiddos coming up through and having the foundational skills coming from 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, that we'll see this utilized even more. So any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Several of the questions I had you answered through your program, but I wonder if you asked the teachers how this impacts them and the way they interact with their students themselves and how they handle situations.
I can't speak for 6th grade directly, but I do know that I was in a meeting yesterday, and we were having a conversation with some parents about some issues that we were having. And the teacher was sharing about how the lessons that they were doing in 2nd step actually directly related to some of the conflict that we were having, and how they go back to the lessons and they refer to them when they're dealing with conflicts with students. And I know our counselors utilize that as well, that we try and refer to these are some of the concepts that you're learning in 2nd step. So we're trying to tie it in pretty often when we're dealing with social and emotional issues with kids during the day.
Okay. I know it's hard for adults to change the way we respond to things sometimes. Remind me who teaches this? Is it the classroom teacher?
Yep.
Or is there
Yes, so
a specific?
no, so
somebody who does
each
it?
homeroom is teaching it to their classes. I think another additional change that we'll probably make for next year is kind of have I don't want to say like a scope and sequence, or like a schedule of trying to make a more programmatic plan for when they're teaching what, so that everyone's kind of closer around to the same time and same lessons. This year we kind of left it up to teachers to kind of determine when they were working on it. So I think that'll be a change again for next year, is trying to make sure everybody's on the same schedule.
And they do this like 15 minutes once a week? I just don't remember.
Yeah, some places are doing it once a cycle, some places doing it once a week, depending on the building, and it takes about 20 to 25 minutes for the lesson.
But weekly, so it's not
Yes.
taking lots of classes.
No, it's
I'm
not.
not saying this is not important, but I know we're.
No.
squeezed for
It's not
class time, too.
it's not happening like nonstop, all
Okay.
20 lessons at once. It's usually once a week, and it works out that if you do it by cycle, typically 20 cycles happen by about Christmas break. So when you look at it that way, there's 20 lessons. They're getting through the entire program about by Christmas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Brady. Mr. Donato.
When you talked about the level of engagement, are there ideas or anything swirling as ways to rev up that engagement with the kids to make them more invested in it?
Yeah, I think with the 6th grade, it's just getting used to teaching that. And I think being more middle school focused, it's more direct teaching. At the lower levels, with 2nd step, there's a lot of activities where they talk about, they show them a problem, they problem solve together, they engage the class. So it's just, I think it's really that student engagement piece on the teacher side of things, just trying to get kids involved. And being the first year that we're going through it, I think it just took a little change to get used to of, it's not an elementary based, it's more of a middle school, so it's more that direct teaching stuff. So it's just some changes I think that we can make on the teaching end.
Okay. And this is, I'm not kind of out of the elementary world for a bit
okay.
now. This is already being taught or just newly being implemented at the primary levels?
Yeah, so we had it up until 2022. We had it, you can buy it either digital or in a box. And what we had was one box per grade level for the entire district.
Okay.
And the counselors were utilizing it in counseling small groups and things like that. When 2nd Step came out with the digital option, we had trialed it and found that it was really beneficial. So in 2022 was the first year that we had used it district-wide for all of our kids to have it. So it's something.
K-1?
Yes, K through 6. And I know the middle school has dabbled a little bit. They looked at it, I know they looked to see something, but right now we're only using it at the elementary level.
Now, the middle school, as I understand it, has another type of program they're doing, that they're focusing on these types of behaviors and issues.
They're doing a lot of building type stuff with some of these elements as well.
And on this, I know Mr. Donato had one, but I just want to ask one more
Go ahead.
question. With the social media and thinking about the different rules that they're going to, rules or procedures or practices in the middle school, will they how do I phrase this? Do you talk about, the sixth grade teachers talk about then how when you get to middle school, you're not going to be able to do this, or you can't do that? And I know maybe a lot of them don't have the smartphones yet. I know I'm kidding myself.
They all have the smartphones.
I don't know how much they pull them out, let me put them that way.
It is not as a regular problem at the elementary level because we
Right.
have cubbies and backpacks and things are a lot of
Sure.
times stored there. We don't necessarily go over the specific rules at the middle school. The social media stuff they're talking about with them right now is just more along like social media use and appropriate things in terms of usage. We're not necessarily going over school rules in terms of social media and using your devices. That's something we could add on, and we do talk to them about. They know that, especially in like 4, 5, 6, when it's becoming more and more prevalent. We talk to them about devices are away, they can't use them during the school day, things like that. So we address it outside of this, but we're not specifically going over what the rules are at the middle school.
And with the bullying and the bullying specifically, because cyberbullying would be under the social media.
Yeah.
Do they talk about, these build up and build into what they're going to be doing in the middle school? Because sixth grade is pretty transitional, so.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing, I'm not gonna say, it doesn't directly relate to what they're doing in the middle school, but they're touching on general concepts that are the same as what they're addressing at the middle school.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Donat, I already interrupted him
Go ahead,
once.
No, please.
Go ahead.
So thank you for this presentation, Mr. Kramer. What is the outcome of this? Are we sunsetting the program at the fifth grade level and moving forward with the sixth grade, or
Yes.
what's happening now?
Yep, the plan would be based on the responses that we've seen is to continue using the sixth grade lessons with the sixth graders because they are relevant and they are appropriate. And I think it makes sense. If we were not to do that, I would suggest that we probably just stop the program at fifth grade because it wouldn't make sense to double up on the fifth grade lessons. But at this point, I think it makes sense to use the K-5 program up to fifth, use the sixth grade lessons in sixth, which are connected to the middle school, and when they go to the middle school, use what they're using down there.
Okay, thank you.
You said, I lost the train of thought of my question. Okay, got it back. With this, you said all the elementaries are doing is slightly different, but they're all getting the same concepts?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And you talked about for next year having a scope and sequence or covering.
Yeah.
And again, that'll be for all 7 elementary schools? Or,
Yeah, just to make things a little more uniform.
okay. Next part with these courses, there's a common language. Now, I know the classroom teachers are teaching this, but what about the aides, the specialists that don't necessarily sit in there? If the kids if they have no clue about what's going on.
Yeah. So a lot of that comes through our PBIS program. So when you talk to the building principals.
Your what program?
Acronyms. The Positive Intervention Behavior Support Programs. So we all have our own positive behavior support programs within the buildings. They're all a little different, but we're all tying these skills within that. So when we're meeting as a building-wide unit, like at Centerville, we have building-wide meetings. And when we sit down, we talk about those kinds of things. We're tying in the vocabulary there. That includes all the aides come to that, all of the teachers come to that. In addition to that, the specialists, counselors, all of the teachers in the district can have access to this. It's not a program where we get a set number of license. We have license per building, so we can include everyone on that. So they all have access, and actually we share it with, so like our special education classes, our supplemental classes where the kids are in there a majority of the day. In those classes, those kids are getting the second step lessons within their reg ed setting, but the teachers also have access to this to then, if they're having issues within their own setting, to then review those lessons. So even though they're not classroom teachers, the other professional staff members have access to the program.
Okay. And when we received this presentation 2 years ago to purchase this, one of the comments made, and probably still too early to tell yet, but there was a comment made this should help with discipline overall, and actually producing some data for that. And again, I get that it's only the second year, but what's your overall feeling, at least for your building? I know you can't speak for the other 6 elementaries.
I don't know if I have a hard answer for you, but I think for me, the thing that is definitely, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It gives me hope moving forward with this, is that I'm hearing of it so much. That I'm hearing the teachers talk about how they're using it with kids. I'm hearing parents talk about it when we're in meetings and we're having IST meetings about behavior or struggling students, we're relating it. So it's something that's coming up kind of organically. We're not purposely bringing it up, but I'm hearing teachers really tie it into things. So I know that they're finding it very meaningful with their kids because they're seeing issues that are happening that directly relate to what they're teaching.
And I'm assuming, since you said ideally they could be done by Christmas with everything, they go back and reteach, for lack of a better
Correct.
way of saying it.
We have access to the program all year. So one of the things that we've talked about is, if you do a lesson on, conflict, you get through that, you get to March, and you're realizing one of these lessons that we talked about, you can go back and redo that lesson. So it's a nice resource to have to be able to go back and review.
Okay, and my final question, I guess, is, again, because we have basically 3,000 kids learning the same things, and they now go into 2 elementary schools. Hopefully, we're tying, or 2 middle schools.
Yeah.
And again, that's not your thing here, but hopefully the language they're learning there will carry on
Yeah,
into the middle schools.
all the kiddos that are leaving the elementary to go to the middle school have had all the same lessons at this point. So there should be a commonality there.
I guess, and maybe the question is, are the middle school teachers aware of this? So when the new 7th graders are showing up next year that have had this.
And you'll see some of these components when I go through the comp plan, but it is something that the middle schools are working to integrate organically into their schedules as well. And we're also looking to focus a little bit more on some of our transition over the summer, which we'll be talking about a little bit more in the future as well.
Next year, Mr. Kramer, you can bring some data.
You got it.
I'll let you.
I'll throw one in. This will be the last one. Well, maybe not. No, it won't be the last one. Probably more of a basic question, really more for clarity than anything for me.
Sure.
Can you speak to, or can you remind me of what tracking mechanism we have in place or evaluation mechanism in place that we know that the content that's being taught and gone over is not just being, like, we talk about how it's being utilized, but how do we even know it's being absorbed?
Yeah, so I would refer to, if I was going to pull like hard data on it, I would look at our discipline referrals and look at where the conflicts are, what they look like, and then look at them over time. I mean, that would be the best way to go about it. Again, we're including it multiple ways, but I think if we're trying to figure out, like, is it making a meaningful difference in terms of like actual discipline within the building, that's the place we're going to track it. I think the tracking information that we have in Power School now that we've made a little more robust, I think will help us do that moving forward, because it's not just tracking major behaviors anymore like suspensions and things like that, but just conflict things, and we can keep track of kind of anecdotal data now within Power School that'll help us kind of analyze, where are we seeing problems, what are those problems, and then is there ways to address them through second step, or is it something that we need to supplement with?
Got it. Okay. But there's no like traditional testing or
No.
or like focus group, we would call it in the business world. I mean, like,
No.
we're not doing anything like that, right?
No.
Okay.
So when will we see you again talking about outcomes?
That's a question for this fella.
Yeah, for you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a valid point. I was going to ask you on a scale of 1 through 10, is it worth keeping, and which
10.
is 10 worth keeping, but Mr.
based on
Wagner's
what?
much better.
Yeah.
at getting
I
to
mean,
the
you're
point.
talking to the wrong guy. I find this, I personally find it to be very relevant for our kids. I think it's something that gets genuinely overlooked at the elementary level of teaching behaviors, because you don't know what Doug might teach his kids at home might be different from what I teach mine, and I think it covers the gaps of just some of that, especially kiddos that are coming to us in kindergarten and first grade without having any preschool experience. These are soft skills, but they're really important skills, and so just in terms of teaching those things and having that common language across buildings and across the district, I see it as very beneficial. But yeah, I mean, we can work on pulling some hard data for
Well,
you.
you talked to all the 6th grade teachers,
Mhm.
and and after having gone through the curriculum evaluation, I found it, I don't want to go visit any classrooms to watch them teach this. But I did find it, just talking to the teachers and talking to the principals, helpful to know. I don't think we need to do that, but I would like for you
Yeah, I mean,
to hear, what your presentation was wonderful, Mr. Kramer, but I would like to hear what the other principals are also
sure.
thinking, what their impact is, and whoever else in your buildings that you think would be,
Yeah, I mean,
pull all that information together. It's anecdotal. I don't know if that's going to tell us what
Yeah.
we need, but.
I mean, yeah, I guess just for me, it's just one of those things, and I know Mrs. Eshelman has some thoughts or questions, but I'll be quick. I mean, like for me, I won't even begin to argue or discount or say that something like this isn't worth it. I wholeheartedly agree that it would be, right? There's no question in my mind. However, I also am a fan of being able to kind of prove that through, right? I'm always a fan of okay, well, show me, even if it is anecdotal, right? Like, there's got to be something that can then translate into the real world so that we actually know that what we're doing has some type of positive impact or some type of effect. And without knowing that, why are we doing it in the first place, right? So that's the heart of my question.
I would say, too, I mean, along the lines of tracking data with this, this is a very gray area in terms of, like, getting actual numbers. I mean, when you look at, if you look at, like, some of the unit stuff, right, you're looking at, like, self-management, personal relationship skills, responsible decision-making. Like, it's hard to quantitate, like, how many responsible decisions you made on the playground this week. Because, I mean, a lot of times it's not many, but, like, when they, it's hard to determine. So, it's, like I said, for me, my measuring stick is talking to the teachers, which we can definitely do, get, information from all the grade levels and talk to the principals about what they're seeing. But, like I said, when I have something like this that keeps coming up and I hear it just organically in conversation, like, to me, that means it's meaningful and they're seeing it being worthwhile.
And we know that's happening in your school, but is it happening in Farmdale or,
Yeah.
That would be my question. I mean, you're never going to get something that are hard numbers around this particular.
Yeah. But we can get anecdotal data from teachers for sure.
Okay.
My only question is, because I taught sixth grade and I love them so much, they are awesome. I do just want it constantly being looked at, that it's meaningful.
Yeah.
Because with sixth graders and fifth graders and fourth graders, those intermediate grades, it can sometimes backfire.
Yeah.
If they're hearing the same thing over and over, and I wouldn't want it to become something like that in those upper grades. So just, and to me, it's not even about data and even anecdotal things, but letting us know what you guys are doing to keep it fresh, to keep it applicable, to keep the kids engaged, make it more meaningful at those upper ages.
It is nice, the way the program works is that from year to year, those skills build upon each other, so they're getting in deeper. And then it is one reason why I like the sixth grade version is that it is less kiddie than the elementary version. They have the cartoons and things in the elementary version when they're watching videos and things like that, but the sixth grade, again, being directed to middle school, doesn't have like that kind of kiddie feel to it. So I do think it makes it more meaningful for them.
And I like that consistency over the years, but I see for how some kids that could get really rote.
Sure.
And I wouldn't want our fifth and sixth graders being like, oh, here we go again. We have to be responsible, but I don't know if I'm always going to be responsible. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be a thing that goes in one year and out the other just because they're almost hearing it too much.
Sure.
But just any way you guys are switching it up, teachers are switching it up, kids are switching it up in those upper grades would be something I'd want to hear, like year to year, or updates on, something like that.
Yeah, cool.
And keeping in mind, there's always going to be kids who in and out.
Or like me, I hear it, and then I hear it again, and then I'm like, I'm already doing that. Okay, what do you got for me? Like, I don't want it to be, I don't want it to turn negative.
Yep.
Anyone else? I think we can, thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, appreciate it. All right, the next thing is the district comprehension plan.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's that
comprehensive.
time of year again for a comprehensive plan update. I also want to do a little foreshadowing for you. We are going to be entering back in the comprehensive planning cycle. So if it's something that you've done in the past and would like to participate in, or if it's something that you were curious about, please reach out to Mr. Donato, and we'll be assembling our comprehensive planning committee a little bit later on this summer. So with that said, if we can go to the next slide, everyone always asks me why all our comprehensive planning slides start with the vision and mission slide, because we do that because that really guides our entire planning process. In fact, one of our whole committee-wide meetings is basically set up to go through our vision and mission. And I know you look at that and you can say, how can you spend a whole meeting talking about, just what's up on their board? But those of you who have been to some of my meetings know that I can easily make that into 2 hours. So we do go through a lot, making sure that all the things that we're doing and all the things that are contained in our plan add up to that vision and mission, and we can articulate that in our plan, because that is an important part of your plan as it gets entered to the state. So I'm not going to go through each update of things that fall under each bullet. I've just picked a couple things under each bullet point here. I want to highlight the K-12 science and tech ed teams that have attended the STEELS workshops. As we've shared with the board, with the new STEELS standards coming on board, the districts spend a lot of time looking at revisions and curriculum and how do we get this work accomplished. Another thing I want to share with the board is elementary art teachers that are integrating some of their instruction with the ELA pilot that we've all been working on so hard and so long, and seeing that integration into other subjects. Those of you that know that anytime we can integrate other subjects into other areas, whether it's reading into social studies or reading into art, that's very powerful reinforcement for our kids.
I was excited to see that as a parent, that cross-curricular in the elementary level. That's exciting.
Yeah. On goal 1-2, graduate students who are ready to enter their chosen post-secondary pathway, I want to share a little bit about what the high school's been doing and some of the industry credentials that have been occurring. And it may be something that even we do a full-on presentation to the board at some point at an upcoming ed programs, because the district's really done a nice job focusing on making connections for kids. I feel like those of you that have been on the board for a long time, you always hear me talking about how we're working with this segment of kids and how we're working with our AP courses that we just had offered, and how we're working for college. And we've really focused on some of our post-secondary options for students that maybe aren't on some of those more traditional paths that Hempfield served in the past. So maybe a future presentation at ed programs in the future. I also wanted to highlight our Act 158 pathways. If you remember, a year ago was the first year this was in place. And what this did was gave kids that weren't proficient on the Keystone multiple pathways to still achieve graduation status. It was an area that was of great concern for a lot of districts to manage all this data and make sure that every student was able to maintain a pathway. As of the date you see there before, we are already 94% complete on that pathway. And we do get a 5% piece, but of flexibility that we can apply for, which we've not had to use. So very, very thankful for the guidance team and the high school team working on assembling all those things. Next slide. The thing I want to share about 1-3, strengthening use of evidence-based instructional strategies. We had training instructional literacy for all elementary classroom teachers, reading specialists, ELD, special educators. This is a training that is required now and will be required moving forward. So we started that process and we'll be entering that training cycle window. Next slide, please. Reducing barriers. Again, a couple exciting things here, just two things that I want to highlight. One was that we implemented a pre-referral process to identify students needing additional support, whether it's English language learners, whether it's a simple strategy, whether it's a simple work group, maybe it's a social skill that gets reviewed with them. There is a process to help identify some of those students that are struggling. Another piece along with that additional support, and again, I know we don't like acronyms, I apologize, but if I did not have acronyms in this PowerPoint, it would be incredibly long. MTSS is multi-tiered systems of support. And it really is exactly what it says. It's each kid getting what they need and different levels of support for those students. And we've been spending a lot of time in the high school specifically working on providing professional development for high school staff and making sure that there's opportunities for students moving forward to reduce those barriers. So every student's getting what they need.
Would that be coming from the student themselves, coming from a teacher seeing a need, coming from a parent seeing a need, like, or any, or?
Any and all those
Okay.
things, yes. It's being headed by Mark Snitzer, our 12th grade principal at the high school. It was something that he brought over from a previous district that he's been really excited about and has really done a nice job with this year for us. Creating a safe, supportive learning environment for all students. This bullet that I want to share is providing opportunities for students to discuss school climate. This actually came from the high school, and they've been really focused on really taking advantage of those older students and the student feedback that they can give. We know this happens at some other levels, but it's something that the high school's done a really nice job with this year, and it's helped shape some of the programming that you see at the high school and some of our responses. You've been the lucky recipients of some of the information that gets back to the board through Student Council. Our BCBA, our Behavior Certified Behavior Analysis, Board Certified Behavior Analysis, has completed a CPI training course which allows us to work with our staff and continue to train them on crisis intervention. Mostly what we're working at on crisis intervention is really de-escalation skills. While we have skills to, if a student is acting out, to safely manage that student, really where we're focusing on is the prevention of that student getting to that elevated state. And I believe we shared this in some couple other presentations, but we had a full-time student assistance program coordinator and updated SAP programs this year at K-12. This is the first time I think we've had a full 5-day SAP individual since, I want to say, 2009. Next slide, please. Opportunities that prepare all students for their post-secondary careers. I just want to share for some of those, and some of these, maybe you've made it to some of these events, there's just a list of all the different workshops that the high school has run in helping students make that jump, whatever their next path is. I know they just had a career piece the other day. I know with the Hershey Entertainment, they've actually brought in a company to help students maintain summer jobs. So they've been real creative in helping students with that next level, and we're very proud of that.
Dr. Musser,
Yes, Mr.
in light of the well-publicized issues with the FAFSA issue, are we doing anything to support students in that? Is there anything we can do? How has that impacted those workshops?
Yeah, so those workshops are actually fairly well attended, and we also have our counselors helping with those areas as well. We haven't really seen an outcry of why they are difficult and there are noted issues with it. We haven't seen that as being an issue for us.
So the students have been able
Yes.
to?
Yep.
I mean, is it being over-reported? Like, are the student aid reports being issued more than what we're hearing? And you may not know, but I mean, this is a big issue.
I don't know. That certainly has been. I just know that our workshops are well attended, and we just haven't seen the issues here or have had needs. I know the board or the high school administration and counselors have been very flexible with providing additional assistance for those that can't even attend the nights and setting up other meetings. So I think they've been working through most of those issues with our students on a student case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Moving on to 3, our operational excellence goal, and this is something that I always share too, is very unique to Hempfield's comprehensive plan. A lot of comprehensive plans you'll see from other districts, they really all are focusing on strictly instructional pieces. Here we recognize that there's a big operational piece that allows us to do what it is we do for students. So obviously the feasibility study is complete there, and we're looking for architects, and we're in that RFP process. So the board and the community are well aware of that, as that's been mentioned at numerous meetings, but we're moving forward in that area. Improved external and internal communication has been a goal for almost all Act 93 members this year. So it is something that we've all been working on, whether it's traditional communication through the phone, whether it's web blasts, whether it's email blasts. Working with Mrs. Burkholder, we're trying to improve some of our communication pieces across the district. If you want to go to our last 3, strengthen safety and security. We made a couple changes. I don't know if some of you have been over to LMS at all in the morning, but they made a couple changes in the drop-off procedures there to increase some of the safety of our students moving through the cars as parents are dropping off and picking up. One of the things that we're also focusing on is promoting the prevention model versus the reactive model. So any of you have talked to Bill Gleason, you get a couple sentences in before he goes about preventing relationships and teaching and educating as opposed to target hardening. So he continues to share that message, speak at faculty meetings, and we're continuing to work in that area. The last piece I'll share along safety is this is the first year that the Act 55 required all school personnel, and I mean all school personnel, to receive safety training. 1 hour of in-person training and 2 hours that couldn't be online training. So we are working through that process. We've offered numerous opportunities. We are in the process now of catching anyone that's missed our offerings, but we will be in compliance with Act 55 by the end of the year.
How often does that have to be repeated? Is that like a 2-year cycle, 3-year cycle? What?
Every year.
Every year?
Yep. A couple of the trainings that are required, you are familiar with, are 5 years, like Act 71, suicide prevention, a couple of those, but the safety one is an every year training.
And, well, what happens if they don't do the training? You just keep hounding them until they do? Make them stay after school?
Yeah.
Or?
We have numerous opportunities to make sure that everyone can get the
Positive
training. Yeah.
encouragement.
We started some of this work super early on, so some of the faculty meetings as early as October already had some components of this training. So lots of opportunities and a little bit of patience with the first year. It's like any new training that's mandated. And as we share, anytime there's legislature comes up with a new requirement, they always pack on some type of training requirement for the district. And in the limited in-service time we have, you need to get creative to meet those needs. So my next slide is the handy-dandy timeline slide. And I know I was having a conversation, people can't believe that we are already back in the actual planning process. So we're already in some of the data gathering stages, things that are working, things that aren't working, goal areas that I've received a ton of feedback on that, yes, we're hitting this area really well, areas where I received, we don't have a lot of feedback on this bullet point, this might be something we want to revisit. As of now, our current direction is to try to continue to build on our plan, which is best practice. When you have wildly different plans and you're pulling in different directions all the time, it's very difficult for your students and staff to stay on point with us. So we are continuing that process. We'll have our first of our 3 meetings that we hold with the community. Generally, we've been able to get it done in 3 meetings. If we needed a 4th meeting, we certainly can do that. We'll hold those meetings. I'm looking to have a completion date on early January. I'd like to present to the board either in the full board meeting or in the ed programs section of that month. And I have to have my plan approved and into the state by March 30th. So I have a little bit of wiggle room there in case we have bad weather or something. And plus, I just like to plan for wiggle room because I don't like to be stressed. So that is where we're at with our comp plan process. And again, if you have any interest, it would be great to get some old perspective, someone that's been around a while to share some things from the past, and some of the new members. It'd be great to have you aboard as well so we can get a wide perspective. I will bring in parents, students, business. We bring in all different stakeholders from the community so we have a well-rounded plan.
How many board members did we have? Was it 3 or 4 the last?
Yep, I'll take them all.
Okay.
3, 4.
12.
Don't want any more than 4.
4 is, yeah, I understand that.
And it is the one meeting that I actually provide candy for.
He's good at that.
Yeah, it's old. It's old. I get it after, but I provide something.
Leftover
Yeah, I
holiday.
mean, it's not new. It's Valentine's.
You throw in a couple hoagies and we could have a discussion.
No, it's
It's a bear. It's a big plan.
a big plan. We come in here, if I'm thinking of the right meeting,
You're right.
and we sit around and all the different categories of adults
Yeah.
attend. I found it, and also students, I found it very interesting, and I'm always super amazed at the quality of input from the students
Yeah.
that we get as well. So, and it did take us, actually, I expected the vision and mission statements to take longer.
Thank
than
you
it
for that.
did. So, yeah, good opportunity, so.
If I could offer a suggestion, I guess mainly to Mr. Donato. I recall last time there was a little bit of what I'll describe as tension around who was driving the process when the board got involved and things like that. And I might suggest that before we go too, since this ultimately is the district's strategic plan and strategic planning is ultimately within the purview of the board, it might make sense for the board to do a retreat or something early in this process so that the board can articulate some strategic goals and they can be worked into the process as part of the overall committee structure.
I would just suggest the two mics discuss it
Yeah.
and Pat and
Yeah.
give us the feed and
Yeah.
you're in kind of
I work,
overseeing
just to be
it,
clear, I
so-
work for them.
But you have good ideas.
Thank you.
Good input. Yeah, and just give us feedback about what you think we should do.
In that case, hoagies are a must.
All right, required, I get it, I get it.
Yeah, it's a good idea, yeah.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Anything else on the comprehensive plan at this time? All right, let's move to Jeremy Paul. Mr. Paul, sociology, Schoology.
Okay, Dr. Dandridge and Dr. Musser asked that I do a quick update here for Schoology. So what I'm going to show you today is something that we've had ongoing in the process for several years. We've had Schoology for quite a while. Back in the day, we had a number of different systems that teachers were using to organize content for their different classes, and we were able to move that into one product called Schoology, which has been really helpful as we moved forward with one-to-one, and then obviously throughout the pandemic and things like that as well. So as I mentioned, Schoology is our learning management system. It provides our district educators with an online platform to communicate with students and parents, as well as digitally organize and deliver that course content. Within Schoology, our educators can manage assignments, create and deliver assessments, facilitate discussions, and provide resource links in one centralized location. So that's kind of what Schoology is. The process for this, as I mentioned, we've had some course structure and expectations over the years. Our last, what I would say, major update was probably back in 2019. Recently, we put a committee together, teachers and administrators, to have some conversations around what those look like and where we can move forward with things. We did that in October. After that, we took that feedback from that group and had some discussions administratively, and then our instructional technology team got to work on updating and improving and taking a look at those different expectations or that different course structure to gather some commonality across the district in that. So we continue to review that information through September, December. You can see the different months up there at some of our different administrative and ed talk meetings. And we're at the point now where we have what we feel is a working copy to move forward with for the 24-25 school year. Go to my next slide there, Mike. The next slide here just kind of shows or talks about the update section of Schoology. There's kind of two sections there for students and parents. One is updates and one is materials. This area here with updates is a place where teachers can share upcoming work, reminders, celebrations, events that are happening in the classroom. Sometimes some of our teachers are using that area and sending an email out, a whole class email or communication to parents with that. One of our recommendations there is to put that information from that email into the updates section in Schoology as well, so it's kind of a one-stop shop that parents can see and access. The other area there is whole classroom communication with newsletters, documents, and presentations, different sites. So, there's other communication going out along those lines with some of those newsletters and other ways of doing that. Again, our recommendation or best practice there is to have that information posted in the updates area as well. The second part overall is the material section. And as I mentioned earlier, the materials section there allows teachers to organize digital materials along the curriculum side of things. So electronic assignments, have discussions, different assessments, different links that the teachers can post up there for students and for parents to be able to access. The next slide here, just kind of what we did when we started looking at this. Our document used to be a little bit longer. We felt it made sense to kind of condense this a little bit and put it into different grade bands. Because as you can imagine, Schoology is used a little bit differently at the primary area than it would be in grades 3 through 12. So you'll see a couple different slides breaking this out a little bit. And so again, this is a resource for teachers. You can see there's different links in there to support them with some of the how-tos that we do in some of our professional development. But the first couple items there under course setup are just some basic things, at least from my lens. I call them basic, but the first one there is just changing that blue default icon in the upper left-hand corner when they go to a course. And while I say that's basic for our primary kiddos, that's what they're looking for in order to go to a certain course sometimes, because they get the picture more than they do the actual words. Then there's some privacy settings that we ask them to adjust in there as well. Those privacy settings are more about whether or not and who can post to course updates or comment on an update or edit some discussion posts, those types of things. So the next part there is the actual course content. From the K-2 area, we asked them to put a course information folder in there. Some of the things in the course information folder would be teacher contact info. So how do parents get a hold of them if they need to? What does a daily or weekly schedule look like? So, you know, when you're usually getting a daily, weekly schedule at the elementary, that's a good spot, one-stop shop, to be able to put that in so that parents and students can access it. Know when their specials are, know when their lunch is, those types of things. Classroom expectations as well. There's always a link to the student handbook in there too. And then there's, you know, obviously a lot of different software programs that students have access to that we use in the district. And we ask that they provide kind of a cheat sheet for parents so that they know what other systems we're using for what in there as well. Second bullet there is online textbooks and other resources. So asking them to create a page in there to make sure that they have the login information and descriptions of those other online textbooks or resources that we're using. That way, you know, a lot of that work happens in those systems versus having to repost them inside of Schoology. It doesn't make a lot of sense. At the primary level K2, we also look at the classroom newsletters or peek at the week that might be sent out, as I mentioned earlier, from an email perspective to be put in a folder inside the course content. And then at the primary level, a lot of times instead of the primary teachers using every single course that they have in Schoology, reading, math, science, a lot of times they'll just direct their students to the homeroom course that they have. And inside there, they will start to create the different subject area folders that they have in there. It just makes it easier for those students to access. So that's what that final bullet point there is referencing, being able to utilize those individual folders versus all the different courses there. Grades 3 through 12, I'm not going to call out a lot of these as well because you're going to see some repeat in this. What I'd like to do is focus more in the 3 through 12 level. In the bottom 5 bullets there, that's kind of where things start to differ. One of the things that we've been actually starting to work on a little bit this year as well, as you get more and more stuff in those Schoology courses, sometimes it gets hard to find things. And so what we're recommending at this point, and what we've started to work through with many of our teachers this year, is a current folder. So you put a current folder in there, and that way when students and parents log in, it's easy to find out what the students are working on right away at that point in time. And then as things get worked on or completed, they can move that to a completed folder, which is one of the bullets there as well. That helps students be able to go back, if something they completed, they can go back into that completed folder and be able to find it in a chronological order as well. So those two folders, I think, have been a pretty big hit with most of our teachers and students this year. So we're looking to expand that across the district moving next year. Throughout the year, including Schoology materials such as assignments, discussions, and quizzes that are processed electronically. So once you get to the 3 through 12 level, there's a lot more of those types of things going on inside of Schoology with those older students. And then down towards the bottom there, the last couple bullets kind of focus around due dates and events. So there is a calendaring system inside of Schoology that allows a teacher, when they assign either a discussion, a test, a quiz, or any kind of content to students, that it requires a due date, which is helpful because it puts it on a calendar inside of Schoology for them. But the bullet above that talks about utilizing events. So if one of those items is not necessarily an assignment or a test or something like that, maybe it's just a reminder to students that something's coming up the next day or there's a special event next week. What we're suggesting and asking them to do is use the events area of that calendar, where they can create an event on the calendar and it's not tied to an assignment or anything like that. So that's basically, those two slides are kind of the nuts and bolts of what we're moving forward with for the 24-25 school year as far as Schoology course structure and some of those expectations that we're looking for there. The next couple slides that I have is just kind of some screenshots for you. So what we did was we created some model courses for our K-2 and our 3-12 teachers. And some of this information in these slides are items that we pulled out of current courses as well. So as you look at the screenshot there on the left, that's a 3 through 12. So you can see there's an old content folder up there. It's not even published out, so students wouldn't see that yet. That's stuff that's not live for them yet, or parents. And there's that course information folder that I talked about. There's the online text resources, that kind of cheat sheet for what kind of other online text is that class using at that point in time. There's a resources folder there, so if there's specific things that they need to access or use throughout the year, common things, that's what that folder would be for. And there's the current and completed folders that I mentioned earlier. I don't want to go to the next slide yet, but in the next slide you will actually see kind of the breakout of that current and completed folder and how some of those look, just with some example content. The screenshot on the right over there is basically the updates section of Schoology. And so that's where we're recommending that any kind of communication, any kind of important updates or anything like that need to be posted. That's where the teacher would post those inside of Schoology. When the students sign in, as well as a message that they receive when something gets posted, kind of a push notification with their iPads, that's where that stuff would be. And as a parent logs in, they can see that on the update screen as well. The next slide, as I mentioned, kind of breaks out that course information folder, so you can see some of the things there that I mentioned earlier. So that contact information for a parent, that daily schedule or building schedule, depending on what it is, maybe a syllabus at the high school, what that looks like for that specific classroom. And you can see a couple of the other things listed over there on the left-hand side with handbooks, etc. On the right-hand side is just kind of an expansion of that current folder and the completed folder that I mentioned earlier. So as students are working through some of the different content and skills and units that they're working on, as they complete them, the teacher would move them down into the completed folder then as well. So with that, again, it's just a quick review of kind of where we've been and where we're headed. And so we wanted to get some information out to you and just follow up on where we're headed. This last slide here is just, again, kind of the same idea from a primary level, screenshot from a primary course. And you can see that is the homeroom course, so down below there is just the overall subject areas that they've created folders in there for instead of going to each class. So moving forward, this is what we're going to be rolling out for the 24-25 school year for teachers. There are some changes to it, but not a lot of in-depth or heavy lift changes that we see here. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you guys might have.
I have a question. I guess my biggest question, concern would be when will it be rolled out to the teachers, and will they know what their expectations are before they leave in June?
Yep, great question. Very important one. And we've had those conversations as well. And the answer to that is yes, because teachers, as you know, teachers want to be working on those things. Some of them want to be working on them over the summer. A lot of times when courses finish in May, June, whatever it might be, those courses get archived. They have the ability to go in their archived course and move that stuff to kind of their resources section so that they can continue to work on it or tweak it as they need to. And then when courses become available in August to them, they can move that information over to their course so that it's ready to go. So to answer your question in short, yes, the plan would be to move this information out to them prior to the end of the school year, so that they know what we're looking for as far as a course structure moving forward.
Excellent, thank you.
So I'm going to do this as the parent part because I'm going to have a 7th grade daughter in 7th grade next year. So she goes into math class and I look at this a day or two after school starts for math, and I can see what their current, I'm going to see a folder that's going to say current and then whatever they do at the beginning of things. And then if for social studies, all teachers are doing this.
That's our plan. Yep. Yeah, our plan is to have a completed folder and a current folder crossed.
Because a parent, that seems like it would be very, so I know.
Correct. That's our goal. You know, as more you get more, it's not as bad at the beginning of the year, but as you get more and more content in there and things get added, sometimes it's forever scrolling to try to find something. Something's buried in a folder. So our recommendation is to quickly and easily be able to know what that student is working on right during that time frame, whatever unit, whatever theme, whatever week that might be, to access that current folder. And that way you know that's what's going on at that point in time.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess I'm impressed by the amount of work that seems to have gone into this, and if I were a parent or a student or a faculty member, I would look at this and think it's helpful. But help me understand from a board perspective what you want us to take away from this, because this seems like a lot of kind of down in the trenches detail that, like, is there something you want from us as a result of this? Is there an ask associated? Because there's a lot of detail here that just doesn't seem like something the board would be focused on.
So
I'm probably missing something, Mr. Paul.
Good question. Go ahead.
So there was some concern in the beginning of the year, this year, about some inequity between different buildings where there was very well advanced Schoology systems in place in one grade and not in another grade. So the parent transitioned from being able to know all those things that he just shared with you to another area where there was very limited resources for them, and that was a concern.
Okay, well, that's what I'd like to talk about then, because that's the type of thing that the board should be focused
Right.
on.
So that's,
Mr. Paul, could you elaborate on the inequities that Dr. Muster discussed and what you would like us to do about them?
so that's exactly why we presented, these are the requirements we're looking for all teachers to have. So we're setting an expectation, so all those courses are the same.
Okay, well, why wasn't that included as part of this presentation? Because I literally sat here for the last 15 minutes trying to figure out
That
what
was
I
the
was
that
trying
was
to
the
take away from
presentation.
this.
Those are all the same expectations.
It was.
And to show how much our teachers do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Listen, I'm
this
just
is a
glad
full.
I'm not
yeah.
a parent anymore.
Yeah.
I mean,
Been
this
in
is a
school with
this
it,
is a
so.
full-time job setting this all up in the beginning of the school year, using it throughout the school year with how many students, how many different, as you get into secondary, all your different classes of students. I mean, it's a lot, and I just think it's good to know all that goes on behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see.
I mean, I appreciate that perspective, Mrs. Eshelman. I guess I would respectfully disagree. We know how hard our teachers work. I don't need to see a presentation about moving folders around on a website to convince me how hard the faculty work. I know how hard the faculty work. I would rather see these meetings be used to discuss high-level strategic things that are within the board's purview.
Well,
sorry.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that was the purpose of this, was the
Okay.
strategy was to create equity across the district and across buildings, that they've come up with a plan to say this is what our expectation is, that all teachers, all courses will structure their Schoology courses in like ways so that there is consistency. And I think that was, that's what I took as the purpose of your presentation, that you were telling us, here's how we're gonna fix the problem moving forward. And I, having worked in Schoology much over the years and knowing, you know, different teachers set things up in different ways based on the way our brains think and organize, but it is very helpful for parents and for students to not have to deal with 15 different brain organization systems, that there is one pattern.
And we still
I-
want to
thank
provide
you.
teacher autonomy too. You have teachers that are going to do way more than this. You have teachers that are already doing way more than this or doing it a little bit differently in certain areas, but there are some minimum expectations so that any parent moving to, and we talk about transitions, moving into that next teacher has a basic understanding of what they can look at and understand about what their kid is going through each day.
And I said I was glad, I'm still a parent, I just don't have kids in school anymore. But I know sometimes, and this has been 6 years ago, I would look for something for one of my children, and there would be 3 teachers that never posted assignments or dates or whatever, and then another teacher, you know, was much better at it. But it sounds like you've standardized and continue to refine and standardize the usage of Schoology, which I appreciate that you're doing that, and hopefully the teachers will have positive responses to that, and in that they will do whatever they need to do, whether it's the minimum or even more. And of course, our teachers work. I mean, I appreciate all the work you and your staff have put into this.
And
And
to be
I think
clear,
what
I
you-
do too.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
no,
in any
yeah,
way being
yep.
dismissive of the work that obviously went into this. I'm just wondering why we're seeing it in such granular detail without an introduction of the underlying cause for it. As Mrs. Brady suggested, there was an underlying reason here. Maybe going forward, let's talk about that to contextualize this.
And I think you make a good point. You know, as we continue to move through this, there are things that we find and see that happen throughout the year. This continues to be a work in progress, right? So as we find different things, or there's different things that come up, one of the things is due dates, right? So due dates on assignments. Sometimes they get put in, sometimes they don't. There's weekly emails that go out and get generated from the system, and sometimes, you know, that can cause havoc because it looks like a student didn't have something done. So as you mentioned, Dr. Musser kind of took the words out of my mouth. We're always going to have high flyers here, and we're trying to get, I mentioned earlier when we started, we had 10 different systems, and it was hard for parents to figure out then. If we go to one system and we don't have a core structure behind things and continue to work to improve that, we're kind of in the same boat. So again, trying to standardize some of those things. We're still going to have some people going above and beyond, which is perfectly fine. But trying to get a core structure together that makes sense and is easy for people to navigate and have some minimum expectations.
And another reason we're addressing it too is, again, that external communication, trying to communicate what's occurring in our classrooms. So also related to the comp plan.
Anything you can do to make it easier for the parents to get the information, particularly in the younger grades, instead of bouncing around. And like my daughter's in another school system, but she gets very frustrated when she has to bounce around, and she's very computer tech savvy.
Yep.
So streamlining it is good.
And to that point, that's why we actually suggested they use their homeroom class as kind of a one spot to access those different things. So.
Does this help with the virtual learning courses?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And that was all part of
I mean,
this too? or-
it is, it's a little bit different from that end as they're working in that system more
Sure.
than inside of Schoology.
I would say as a parent, like those flexible instruction days, those snow days, I mean, it's, you know, that a teacher can just put a folder for that flexible instruction day and, you know that's where the kids need to go for what they need to accomplish that day is really helpful.
That's a good point. I didn't even mention that, but
Oh,
the
that
FID
was-
days, yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple of those this year and, I mean, that was perfect.
Any other questions or comments? Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
I asked my
All right.
question.
Okay, just follow up.
Thank
Following
you.
up.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And now we have the name change of theater arts to musical theater.
So currently, our current status is that we offer introduction to theater techniques, and theater techniques advanced. And the way these courses are named, they need to be taught by teachers who either have communications or English degrees or certifications. So what we're proposing is the change of these names and courses to become musical theater techniques, and advanced musical theater, so that we're able to have a teacher with a music certification teach these classes. In order to do this, we would need to tweak the curriculum to align with the Pennsylvania standards that are in the areas of arts and humanities, and make some changes in how the courses run, but they would not be significant changes in the overall concepts. Additionally, our goal would be to archive the existing classes, so if something would change in the future, that we have more room in the schedule for it to be taught by somebody who has a communications certification. We would have the old classes already in place and would be able to change these. So these would change by changing the course and the number, it just gives us some flexibility in staffing and who can teach the courses.
So, Mrs. Dicely, since this, in the last 24 hours, the board has gotten several letters from alumni, Mr. Logan Garrett, Mr. Nathan Mays, and Ms. Abby M., who are all alumni from within the last 10 to 12 years, who apparently were active in our theater programs. And Mr. Garrett, Mr. Mays, and Ms. M. have expressed concern that this change will somehow result in a shifting of opportunities, a decline in opportunities, and that a lessening of Hempfield's commitment to the arts in the non-music theater realm. What would you say to address those concerns? Are they founded? Are they unfounded? And how was the faculty involved? Is this change supported by the faculty?
This change is primarily precipitated by the need to staff our classes at the high school and service as many students as we can. So it's a reflection truly based on the scheduling trouble that we have experienced this year. Dr. Brassman has been working tirelessly to look for solutions to how to make our schedule at the high school work, and that involved us looking at different courses and different certifications in how to meet the needs of the most students. And this was the way that we felt that we could do that best. I would also mention that last year I came to you with a change in the way our speech class was handled, so that we had a speech class that was grades 9 through 12. And we changed it to have a 9-10 class and an 11-12 class. The 9-10 communications class does many of the activities that involve students being able to speak in a situation like an improv kind of situation that's also done in theater classes without the same kind of creativity, but building those communication skills. And we're able to do that in a change of class that we have in our schedule that is still offered in the communications department, or in the English department, but with the communications cert or an English cert. And then this one allows us to offer the musical piece.
How much, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I have a follow-up then.
I'm
Go
just
ahead.
curious, like how much integration now of music will be added to this course? And will that be
will students need to have a certain level of musical background or knowledge or really even interest?
So a lot of the course can maintain the same in that staging and blocking and those pieces that happen both in a theater course or a musical theater course are going to stay the same. All the work that they do on lighting and special effects, those pieces are still the same. So it's not a complete revamp of the class. It's looking at, all right, let's add a unit that would not need someone to have a musical background to come in and do, but would able to still be successful in the class and have fun. We also talked about how it does align nicely with the fact that our school does have the musical program and does have the dance theater, and so it aligns nicely to those, but it certainly is not a requirement to have this course to do those extracurricular activities.
Okay, would you just say that again, so a student does not have to have taken those classes in order to participate?
Absolutely not.
Audition?
No.
Be selected?
Absolutely not. We feel like these classes would be extremely popular because of how popular our musical theater and our dance theater are.
So this will fall under the music department now?
That is correct.
Instead of English?
Right. It just allows us some different scheduling flexibility.
Right.
Otherwise, we likely would not be able to offer the theater class
Oh.
at all in any way because we don't have room in the schedule to do that.
I totally get that. I support that. I'm just trying to figure out
Right.
like
It was,
the structure.
it was truly a creative solution to make sure that we could still have some kind of theater.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we didn't offer it this past year, and we didn't want to have another year without it. So this was a way that we could staff it.
I think my core concern is not your suggestion, but the root cause, which is we continue to reduce our staffing, and our students' needs are they're falling by the wayside as far as how we can address them. And you feel the crunch, and Dr. Brossman feels the crunch in the amount of work that he's put in, and now a precipitation of effects is going to be rippling throughout the building as far as our staff, of who's being changed and what they're, and yes, their contract says they teach where they're told to teach. I appreciate that. But I guess my concern is what this does to the ripple effect of not just this, but so many other changes.
Correct.
Of how we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and not utilizing a teacher that's taught this course for God knows how many years now and is very good at it and is comfortable with it, and finding somebody who hasn't taught it yet to come in and change their routine. I think it's a lot more than the $700 of course writing time.
Right. There is a ripple effect across multiple departments in order to make the schedule work. And so in order to have these things within the English department, because of our multiple certifications in other places, for example, we had lower numbers in Chinese 3 and 4, and we were able to overlay those courses so that they're running at the same time, which is not ideal, but it allows us to offer those courses because, again, we didn't want to cut the courses, so they're running at the same time. Well, that teacher happens to also be certified in music, and because she's certified in music and has already for many years been teaching keyboarding classes or intro to piano classes, she's able to offer those classes. The teacher who's currently teaching the theater classes is German certified, and we need her to teach additional German classes in order for someone who's dually certified in German and social studies to pick up more classes. It is a ripple effect everywhere in order to make our schedule work within the existing number of staff members that we have at the high school.
Out of curiosity, how many students took intro to theater, or theater techniques, and theater techniques advanced?
So
Historically.
that course was not offered this year because, again, we needed our German teacher to teach more German, but in the past, it's usually around 60. The intro to 60 total, and they're half-credit classes, but please know that I have to get the names correct, the advanced musical techniques or the advanced theater techniques is an overlay class that usually only like 3 or 4 kids take. But the point of that class is to have that extra level of leadership, and so it runs at the same time as our theater, introduction to theater class, and then those students are directing and learning those pieces of theater as directors. So those classes actually run at the same time, they're not separate classes.
Thank you.
I guess my biggest concern, and just being new to the board, when I went on the high school tour with Dr. Brossman, and Mike invited us to go on his tours, there was so much talk about things that are really Hempfield-esque, and like, you know, the things, there was like the preschool, there were other things that Dr. Brossman pointed out. And when we got all these letters through email from community members and alumni that have taken this class, it seemed like this was their thing, you know, that thing from Hempfield that kept them loving Hempfield, that kept them engaged as students, all that good stuff. And I know you're trying to be creative in keeping this course, but it just feels like some quality is being sacrificed, and that makes me really uncomfortable, especially if, and again, this came from all of the emails we got sent, that a staff member who's done this for a long time is a key component in why this is so great. And it feels kind of, as a former teacher, it feels kind of like you do all this work to create this great program that so many kids are thankful for and so many families are thankful for, and this seems like almost like you're getting punished for doing wonderful things. And so if there's any way, I mean, my first thought was emergency certification. I don't know, you know, like, it just seems like one of those key things Hempfield is known for, and some kids really care so much about, is kind of being shifted, and the quality part will be sacrificed.
I do feel confident that the new teacher that would teach this musical class will do a phenomenal job with the class itself. So it is frustrating to have to make the kinds of changes that we're making across multiple places to make the schedule work. Next year, if you look at the enrollment reports that you get every month, our current 10th grade class is the largest class in the whole district, and the current 8th grade class is the second largest, which means next year the two largest classes in the whole district will be at the high school. And this is a struggle, as we have been constantly looking at what can we do to fill the needs of our students. And as I said, we didn't want to lose theater. We wanted to make sure we still had it, and this was our creative solution to make sure that we could still offer this for those students who do need this class.
So I want to circle back to my original question, because I heard the background information, but I didn't hear a clear answer about whether you think we are sacrificing non-musical theater options so in favor of the musical theater options. So do you believe that to be the case? Will there be if we move forward with this proposal, will that be the case? Will that be the effect? And my second question is, normally the faculty members accompany you when we're doing presentations about new courses, revised courses. I'm curious why Mrs. Hemrick, the faculty member, is not here with you this evening.
So again, let me go back to the first question.
Okay.
The first question was, are we sacrificing something? We do not have another theater class in the curriculum anywhere. I do feel that some of the concepts in the theater class, if somebody did not want any musical component at all, could certainly take our communications class as a different way to meet many of the same standards. The musical theater piece, in answering Mrs. Brady's question, the musical part is only one portion of this class. All of those other concepts of what theater is that is consistent, whether it's musical or whether it is a play, would be consistent regardless. And so that's still in this course itself. The second part of your question is a little bit trickier in the fact that because there are so many pieces in what I just shared about all the different changes that have to happen to make the schedule work, and the fact that Dr. Brossman has just worked with our scheduling experts and worked on the schedule, we have just now been able to share all of these pieces with staff members.
Okay, and have they been well received by the faculty?
is Mrs. Henrik, who you specifically mentioned, very disappointed because she is passionate about this? Yes. But does she want to make sure that there is still theater offered to our students? Yes. So,
And
you
to be
know-
clear,
you know-
I have not spoken with her.
Right.
She was referenced in all three of the letters we received from the alumni.
Nobody, and it's interesting that you should say that because I was at one of the career fairs, one of the ones that was, we've
I'm
had
not
so
good with
many
all the
recently.
names, but yes, there's.
They all run the same, but I was in the high school gym the other week when one of them was going on, the college one, I think they're the post-secondary fair, what was happening. And I happened to be walking, Mrs. Henrik was there, I stood next to her, and a former student who was there at one of the other, representing a school that was there, came up to her and talked specifically about what great memories from the theater class itself. So we don't want to lose that.
Right.
I just don't have another solution.
No, I hear you. I hear you, and I hear the pain in your voice, and I can only imagine how frustrating this is.
I can't tell you every time I walk into Dr. Brassman's office or conference room, there is a whole new plan on the whiteboard. And we are constantly going, but if we do this, and we do this, and we do this, then we could make this work. And it has been very challenging, and this was our best option.
Is there a way, and I'm just now spitballing, as I like to do sometimes, could we offer a non-musical theatrical production as an extracurricular opportunity, paying the faculty that oversee it whatever extracurricular stipend would be required by the contract? And as for students that want that experience, we put on a theatrical performance fall and spring, or fall or spring, that offers this on an extracurricular basis without the sort of
Cost.
not cost, but I'm
Another-
losing the word. What?
Like credits,
Not credits, just
authorized courses.
And I mean, many school districts
the
offer.
snowball effect.
Right.
The
Many school-
synergistic effects throughout the schedule.
Right, many school districts offer as an extracurricular, play and a musical. Where Hempfield is unique is the dance theater that I don't know of another district anywhere that offers. And so adding a third production of those sorts into the schedule, I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm just saying I think that's why Hempfield, and I haven't only been here 5 years, so some of you have a lot longer history. I don't know if there
We
was a
used to
point
have a fall
where
It
there
was in
was a
some of
play.
the emails too.
Yeah, we used
'cause
to
I
have
didn't.
a fall play, and I
I
don't
don't
know
know-
why the decision was why it got cut somewhere in my, I'm sure funding had something to do with it. I think there may have been something, and I could be very wrong, about just the amount of use of the PAC and practice space for all of these multiple, some are using Hackman, some are using the PAC, and where is the rehearsal time and how the PAC has to be set up for other concerts in the fall.
And while there are students who are unique to one or the other, oftentimes it's a lot of kids that are in all of the same things, and then the rehearsal pieces become tricky too. So it's almost like you have to have a season just for this, and a season just for this, and a
Right.
season
But
just for
then,
this.
but the point remains then that if we don't have the fall play, then those kids that really prefer, who may never sign up for something with the word music in it, might be missing out.
Correct.
On that.
Communication is going to be key with this, and I'm thinking about dance theater. I don't have a long history here, but my understanding is they've had different people at different times who've directed it and come in and done it, and it's still excellent. Same thing with our music department. I like the creativity. We have a limited amount of resources. We have a limited amount of people resources, dollar resources, and space resources. So we have to do that. One of the things that I don't just support ceramic artists and art. I support the arts, just to be clear, 100%. We have chamber music, we have the choir, we have mostly performing arts. When this new group of teachers come together and they talk about what they want to do, they may say, well, let's, like you were saying, let's have something smaller, not smaller, I don't mean smaller. Let's try to do some sort of drama presentation. there's so many options out there. It is a creative field after all. So I'm just thrilled we didn't have it last year and we're gonna have something this year. I'm excited that you came up with a solution for that. It's gonna be interesting to see how teachers who are used to teaching course now have to teach staging, but I'm sure they'll learn and rise to the occasion, and hopefully the former teacher will help and mentor
And as
as
I,
needed.
right, and as I mentioned, we're going to archive the old course, we'll have it there. If something changes in a future year where we're up in one department and down in another department and we can switch this around, this doesn't necessarily have to be a long-term decision. It gives us the flexibility that we need, or we can't offer anything at all in this area next year.
And I appreciate that, but I do get concerned about the overall morale, the overall, and those ripple effects, and the kids, kids who may, when you hear stories like we got very quickly in a very short amount of time from when this happened, I can see a lot more having had more time reach out, and that's just not what I want Hempfield to be known for. So,
We'll still be known for the arts.
No, not
Yeah,
be
you
known
know,
for the
for
arts.
sure.
I mean being known for creating a wonderful program that serves so many students that they will reach out as quickly as they did to support the faculty member that was a big part of that, and that, it was all those things we want for kids. The collaboration, the creativity, the communication, those things that cannot be, tested. Those are the things we want our students to be
Of course.
graduating with. And so looking forward, again, I appreciate all of the work going in to make this schedule work, but it seems like so much time and manpower is taken into that.
It's hard, but new synergy, new people with creativity. I'm trying to be really positive about this.
Yeah,
And we didn't
I
even
know.
have the classes last year.
And I'll bring the
So-
pessimism,
Right.
because
But the synergy, but then we have to have the German. German is a very popular
Right.
language to study.
And we have to have social studies, and we have to,
Yeah,
like,
we
each
have
of
to have
these.
this, and we have to that, and thank goodness our Chinese teacher is flexible and, can also do music and teach multiple levels of Chinese, which, having studied Chinese, ni hao, that's about what I remember. That's pretty amazing, actually, so.
So as being one of the individuals working with Dr. Brossman on multiple configurations, we're at the point where whatever decision we end up making, we're going to have some difficult decisions, and you may have community members or people concerned from that segment. So we felt like this was a creative idea that kind of met in the middle, and think it'll be a positive piece moving forward.
Agreed. I appreciate it.
I guess, Dr. Musser, I would ask you, where does it stop as far as we won't replace the staff? We don't, I haven't quite figured out yet what part of the three-ring circus is in the control of, we need to keep the staff that we have, we can't keep cutting, or we're not replacing retirements. It's a budgetary issue, and I get that, and the board controls the budget. I'd like to hear more forceful recommendations of what we really, I know you are all amazing at what you do, and you will figure a way to make it work with what you're given resource-wise. What would really be, I'd like to hear the recommendations of what would be the best thing as far as staffing.
Well, obviously, we didn't sit down and go this direction by choice.
Right.
This was a response to try to meet the needs of our students. So, if the question is, and again, I think Mrs. Johnson hit the nail on the head, we have competing priorities when it comes to buildings and other things that we have to be careful with here. So we felt like this was a solution that was viable in our current situation. In another time period, in another area, maybe not. But, I mean, if the age-old question is always, would additional staff help? Additional staff always helps.
Yes.
But there's a balance of that cost on the backside and making things work. My thing is being able to offer programming to our students, and I feel like we've accomplished that here. But we are at the stage, and everyone around the table knows that, where tough decisions need to be made as what we're offering, and we're not offering everything, just like Mrs. Dicely said. We didn't offer it last year because we were unable to offer it. There's a couple courses in the high school that, you know, are running that way, and that's our current existence right now.
Right. No, I totally appreciate that. I guess I just, over the course of years, that just keeps, every year, it just, and I worry, where will it stop?
And I want it to be transparent to the community, too. Do you know what I mean? Which is great that we're having this discussion here.
I'm confused. Did we lose a teacher? Do we have an empty slot?
We have
to do
we
this?
have 4 retirements at the high school, and we're allotted 4 positions this current year.
Okay.
But we're not filling them at the same places of what they currently are because of needs in the district.
So we're filling those spots, but they may not be, say, in English. They might be in science.
That's
or
correct. Like,
based on our numbers of students.
we are looking at
In the
how
larger
best to
classes.
fill the
Okay.
schedule, because we need a math teacher to run our schedule, and that's not an additional math teacher. And so we have to pull that from another area, and to pull that from another area has caused that ripple effect across multiple. And while we have 4 retirements this year, and we're replacing with 4 retirements, that's not how it's been every year for the last couple years. And so because we're getting thinner and thinner and thinner in our staffing, it's making us harder to respond to enrollment changes in the district, and also student choice, which means that there have in the past been some courses that we've been able to offer at relatively small numbers that we're saying we can't offer those anymore.
But we have all the classes that the kids need for the 5 pathways? Is it 5? To graduation. For graduation.
Correct.
And
So-
students do get to put options on, and they may or may not get them. I mean,
That's correct. Like,
and
we
they
have
may
had,
be told, not this semester, but the guidance counselor may say, I will fit you in. That's what they did with one of my kids anyway.
right. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
a course just doesn't fit into a student's schedule because
Sure.
they have 2 courses that they want that are offered the same period, and that's it. So sometimes it just doesn't work into a kid's schedule.
And then,
But we have had to prioritize in saying we have too many kids signed up to take a certain class for the number of sections that we may offer. So we may have to say, we're going to give that course to seniors first. And then, so we're prioritizing, and then they may have a chance to get it the next year if they aren't able to get it the first year, because we can't offer another section, because offering another section of something might take the number to something that the board would say, well, why are you offering a class at that size? Well, it's because it's too many kids for 1 section, but not enough kids for 2 sections to
Sure.
give that
It's all about the
analogy.
numbers.
It is, and it's been, again, increasingly difficult.
Dr. Musser, if I think I heard this from Mr. Braversky, going through this when kids make course selection, isn't it above 80% of the kids get what they?
Yeah.
The first time that Dr. Brossman ran the schedule this year, it was about
85.
85% of the kids
I mean,
getting what they
If you think
wanted.
about,
85 isn't bad, but there's 15 that were.
but again, I mean, if you carry it on to, you go on to college, you don't necessarily get, I mean, but this is life, they're not
Right.
going. And then most of these kids, if I understand correctly, if they're not getting their first choice, they're probably getting their second choice in this.
And there's some hand scheduling as well, because again, in the block schedule with the number of pieces, there's some hand scheduling involved, but yes.
I just have to, one of my favorite things that I say is, if people are messy, and then, this situation is a messy situation. And to bring clarity to it, I mean, that requires a lot of creativity, moving around the pieces, looking at what our teachers are certified in, because it sounds like you're having to pull up second and third certifications.
And that's the creativity, as I said, with Dr. Brassman, in looking at every option possible to do within the constraints of what we're able to do with the existing staff.
And also, I keep hearing how there's just not that many teachers out there, especially when you go to the sciences. So I know you'll keep, I'm confident. I don't know that I'm very confident. I do know it. You're going to keep working things out for us and for our students. Yes, Mr.
Thank you,
Keener.
Ms. Johnson. Thank you. I guess, I mean, along the lines of what Mrs. Brady said, at the end of the day, these are political questions that the board is going to have to resolve, because we have a long, proud history of curricular breadth and depth in this district. It is one of the hallmarks of Hempfield. We have buildings that are not new. It is an open question how acute the needs are in those buildings, and I suspect that the board is of different minds how acute our physical needs are in this district. We also have a robust tax base. We have the capacity in this district to have robust curriculums, new buildings, but it will be at a very, very significant cost to our taxpayers. That is a political decision that we can make, okay? We have that authority, but I suspect that is not something that a majority of the district would be in favor of. Or we can make tough, targeted choices, prioritize needs, and keep taxes at a reasonable level. Or the third option, and to be clear, I'm not suggesting this at all, but it is a theoretical option, we can gut the curriculum, we can gut our extracurriculars, we can have the buildings fall into disrepair, and we can probably lower taxes, and Hempfield won't be what it's always been. Those are the political choices that this board has to make. And it's certainly something that I wrestle with as one board member. I know that my colleagues wrestle with it, and I look forward to continuing these discussions, because right now we're talking about one course, but it's not just one course. It is a whole series of effects, and they all are interrelated. So we have a lot of work to do.
And in summary, the district, Dr. Brossman, Mrs. Dicely, everyone are going to continue to work with whatever decisions the board makes to offer the best we can for our students. That's our side of this coin.
And I want to make the best decisions to support you to make the best decisions for our kids. So if that means things that that we need to communicate to the community or just put out there, so just that people are aware that these decisions are going to have to be made if other decisions aren't made. That's just what I want to make clear and make very transparent to everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else?
This course will be up on another action item for the May board.
Right, it would need to be voted on at the May board meeting.
And thank you, because it sounds like you're at least taking a course that wasn't offered and offering it maybe not in the most ideal form, but.
Again, we're trying to work within the constraints of what we have. Is it everything that we want? But as Mr. Keener said, something has to give in this process, and to offer the breadth that Hempfield has always offered is difficult in the staffing constraints.
Well, thank you for all the hard work and the stress that this has put on you and others. I appreciate it. I'm sorry you're in that position. But yeah, to Mr. Keener's point, the district has been known for, no, every child doesn't have to have every single course we've always had over 30 years, but it is what we're known for, the wide variety, the depth and the quality of these electives. And it's what makes Hempfield in many respects, and why people have chosen Hempfield for their students, and we want to maintain that quality.
I'm just going to say, anybody have anything else you want to say? Let's take a 5-minute break.
I will say, Mrs. Johnson, I anticipate the policy committee being record quick. So,
Defer to you.
I leave it up to the board. If people
I'm
want to take
happy to
5, we
crank.
can take 5.
I need to take 5.
Okay, then we're gonna take 5 minutes. We will reconvene
Five
at
at-
6:51.
Yeah, we'll be quick.
That's
All right.
welcome back, everyone. I promised President Donato this will be the fastest policy committee meeting ever, so let's get going. First, we have 3 policies where the administration is recommending no changes: 000, 003, and 140. Does anyone have any objection to moving any of them directly to second reading? Very well. 000, 003, and 140 will go directly to second reading.
I certainly appreciate the board's expediency. The only thing I want to comment is this brings an end to our 000s, and we'll be moving into 300s, so be looking for that next month, along with the vaping draft.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Musser. Policy 140.1, extracurricular by charter and cyber students. The administration is recommending the addition of the change that you see highlighted, which simply requires them to use district transportation to away function.
So if you're part of the team, you're part of the team, and that was kind of assumed in the language before, but some of the language has been clarified, and I wanted to update that in our policy as well.
What brought that on? Curiosity.
There's always questions about what does that transportation mean, is whether it's from home, whether it's from the school, and there's also when teams travel on away trips, sometimes like they'll want to go up in their own car, drive back on their own, that type of thing. So it's all, you're on the team, that's the purpose we're allowing you to participate as a charter student.
All right, any other questions or comments about 140.1?
I do, Mr. King.
Mrs. Brady.
Or do you have one? I've just, the existing portion of that paragraph and then the yellow highlighted portion of the paragraph, to me that sounds confusing. Is that first part being taken out?
No, it's on top. So the question was, it says the board shall not provide transportation. So there's the thought then that transportation won't be provided for those students who participate in those extra. But the district does, when they, for the games competition for district students, we will provide the cyber charter. So it's saying we won't provide transportation for anything else, but when the district is sending a team, we will send those cyber charters and they must ride on our transportation.
Like for practice, like
Yeah, none of
transportation,
that
but like
stuff.
for
There is no,
commit.
because we do have that where students are like, well, can you pick me up and get me over here for practice?
Right.
We do not provide any transportation, but when we do, and again, I understand when you're hooked up, like where it's hooked up a little bit, but when we are sending a team to one of these events, you can ride transportation. Not only can you, you must, and that is the only transportation.
Okay.
There's no special.
I appreciate Mrs. Brady's comments. I agree that it is awkward. Can we simply add clarifying language to the first sentence
Yep.
that
I think
says
that's needed.
We can do
for
that.
practices or home events, and then that will segue
And then like
directly into
however,
the
when
second
the
one.
district does
Yep.
provide, yeah,
We can straighten that up.
that would be
Yeah.
fine. Thank you.
Mr. Nato, you have a question?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, are we comfortable just allowing the administration to make that change, maybe drop it in the board news, and still move this to first
Yes.
reading?
Go team, all together. all of us.
All right, any final questions or comments about 140.1? All right, and finally, under number 5A, policy 004.1 is scheduled for retirement. The reason for this recommendation is in light of our changes to 228, which expanded and codified the student council's role as the official spokespeople of the student body, and giving them the right of voice, nothing in 004.1 is necessary, and in some cases, almost gave the appearance of a board interfering with the internal affairs of student council. So the sense was 004 could just be, 004.1 could simply be retired. Any questions or comments? All right. I think since the retirement, it should go through 2 votes, so we will, without objection,
Yes,
move that to
thank you.
first reading. Anything else for the Policy, Personnel, and Legal Committee? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Donato. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wagner. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
And that's how that's done, Doug.